Come on in, everyone. Come on in because we are here for a new show, y'all. We got a new show, and this is a special show. It's on Netflix. It's called Later Daters. And I think Pam sent it to me. Let me know it was coming on. Thank you, Pam. And also, I want to say that it is executive produced by Michelle Obama. Can you believe Michelle Obama has entered the world of dating? Now I can kind of see it because I don't know if you guys remember that Michelle Obama came out as a big fan of Married at First Sight. I think a couple of times she was dropping in the chat, yelling and screaming at somebody too about marriage. I always quote Michelle Obama all the time when I say you can have it, but you can't have it all. So I'm not too surprised that Michelle Obama has gotten into this dating world. But the Later Daters is not like a dating competition show, which is why I really like it. It's not like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, just with the golden age people, right? You're not competing against other women for a man. You're literally being set up on a series of blind dates. It's more like matchmaking. And they got a behavioral specialist who has come in to help actually study the behavior of people in order to try to match them with different people. So the first episode, y'all, I really, really liked it. If you haven't watched it yet, you can listen to my review. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened, and then hopefully you will decide to watch it alongside with me. If you don't have Netflix, you can subscribe to it, I think as little as $7.99 a month. And then after it's over, you could end it. Now, I think they dropped all the episodes like Netflix normally does, but I'm not going to be reviewing all of them at one time. I'm going to be reviewing one by one. I'm going to be slow walking it, y'all. Slow walking it because I really want to get into it. So first of all, we're going to start talking about the first lady. Her name is Anise. Now, Anise, she don't even look like she's 62. She's 62 years old. She does not look like she's 62. She's been married 3 times and single for 20 years. So she's already had 3 marriages by 62, and she's been single for the last 20 years. So if you look at the math, you say, okay, well, wait a minute. 20 years single, which means her last divorce came at around 42. So between the ages of whatever marrying age, 20 to 42, which is 22 years, she had 3 marriages. So each marriage lasts around 7 years, maybe, just an average. It's just math. Now, one of the reasons why she says she's coming on this show is because she says, she wants to know what her blind spots are. And I think when she was mentioning her blind spots, it's not like her blind spots in choosing a man. I think she wanted to know her own blind spots, like what is it that she's not seeing about herself? And what I liked about that, like her finally getting to that point, is because one of the things I always say is, really, we're the main person in all of our love stories, right? No matter who we've been with, no matter how great, how horrible, whatever the case may have been of the people we chose, we are still a main character in our movie. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, even when we're trying to choose different people or the same people or whatever we're doing, how are we showing up? Are we showing up as the same person? What if you're walking around in the world and you're thinking, hey, I'm choosing the wrong person, but lo and behold, there was some blind spots of your own within your own life you didn't see. So what happens is, what good does it do if you actually happen to come around a really great guy? Because if you're still walking around with those same blind spots, guess what? The relationship still might not work. That's why it's important to remember that dating takes 2 people. It's never going to be all one person's fault. And if you always never look at your own blind spots, either in choosing a person or how you're showing up, you're never really going to solve maybe some of those bigger problems that you're having in dating. But one thing about Anise is she definitely got her body tight at 62. And she says, she's an active woman. She works out. She takes care of herself. And she says she wants him to be just as active as she is at 62. So when I hear that, I say, wow, you want him to be just as active as you. Well, first of all, Anise, you need to see yourself. You need to see yourself as a woman who's not the standard 62-year-old. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you also got to know at what level you're playing. So if you're a 62-year-old and you're probably the top 10% of 62-year-olds in terms of being physically fit, that would mean, let's say you're the top 10, 90% of the men in your age bracket will not fit your request to be as active as you are. So automatically right there, if you're looking for men in your age group or above your age group, you've automatically eliminated 90% of the men. So some people may say, well, does that mean she's got to deal with a guy who's not active? No, that's not what I'm saying. So then you go on and you say, okay, well, if I do want some man who's physically fit, and I know that 90% of the men who are 62 are not going to fit in that category, sure, maybe 10, 15% of men are, that would mean I would have to date younger men. Now what you got to ask yourself is, do younger men want to date you? You see, I always talk about this, that you wanting a man wanting a woman is only half of the equation. A relationship takes two people agreeing that, yeah, I want you, you want me. So when you've eliminated 90% of the men in your age group and you drop down to, say, a younger age group, then you got to ask yourself, would the younger age group want me? And the answer may be yes or no. Or you just say, you know what? I'll take my chance with only 10% of those men in my age group. I'll take my chance with those men because it's still what I want, right? So the first scene that they show of her, she's kind of at home in the kitchen with her daughter. And a lot of these ladies and men on this show, they're being helped by their children, because at this point, their children are, in their 30s. And I think Anise's daughter is even married. I saw a wedding ring. I think she even might be married. So one of the things I like to pay attention to is like, mannerisms and things like that. And so Anise is in the kitchen and she's trying to open a can of something or a jar of something. And, Anise is strong. You can tell she works out. She's well taken care of. And she can't quite open the jar. And she asks her daughter, hey, can you open this up? Because I'm not good at doing manly things. I thought that was interesting, the way she phrased it as a manly thing, opening up a jar. I mean, obviously, either she is faking it because she doesn't want to appear to be manly and strong, or she really couldn't open it because maybe she's 62 and she can't grip it like she used to. Let's be honest. But the therapist or the professional was saying, hey, what turns you on in a man? And one of the things that Anise said was she likes him tall. And what she said, she really likes a man that sees her. And when she said that meant, I asked my question, oh, that must mean that that's special to you. Does that mean that you don't always get that in a man? And what I'm thinking that she was saying, of course, I don't know what the truth is. She's saying, hey, I want a man to see beyond this physical package, this body that I'm presenting. I want him to see me deeply. And the therapist said, you know what? Or no, her daughter told her, you don't look your age and you don't act your age. The way you dress, the way you're shaped, the way you're thinking, you come off a lot younger. And her daughter says you need to date more men in that bracket. And Anise has 3 children of her own. So one thing that Anise said was that when she was growing up, they asked, who's your celebrity crush? When she was growing up, her celebrity crush was Michael Jackson of the Jackson 5, which I thought was really interesting because, everybody knows the Jackson 5, all the brothers kind of had different personalities. But Michael was a man that was more, he was a pretty boy, but he was very soft-spoken. He was very shy, soft-spoken, and sort of docile. So it's interesting that Anise was attracted to that type of energy, right? So in one way, I think Anise says she doesn't want to be manly. Remember, that's what she said. But in a lot of ways, I think Anise exudes a lot of strength. And it looks like she might be attracted to men in which maybe those men aren't as assertive or aggressive. I'm not for sure. I'm just going off of what her celebrity crush is, the aura, the way I see a Michael Jackson, and what type of woman would be attracted to a Michael Jackson. And typically it's going to be women who are sometimes stronger women because they can sort of feel a sort of empowerment over a man like a Michael Jackson. And, The other thing that I want to say about Anise is that she was talking about that one of her marriages was her high school sweetheart. So now we're going to get into this timeline because I do think it's important. I don't want to harp on that she was married 3 times. That's really not the most important part. It's about what were those marriages about. Now we find out, remember the math, she's 62. She's been single for 20 years, which means her last divorce must have happened around 42. And between 20 and 42, what we're going to count is that she was married three times. Now she tells us that her first marriage, she married her high school sweetheart, and they were married for 11 years. So let's just say she married her high school sweetheart at like 20. I'm just going to say 20, which means for 11 years, 20 to 31, she was with the one man. So between 31 and 42, 11 years, she got married twice. So she was with a man for 11 years, right? All the way up until she was somewhere in her early 30s, 32. And then from 32 to 42, within 10 years, she got married twice. So one thing we know about Anise is she doesn't have a problem attracting men. There are a lot of women where their problems in relationships don't necessarily come in the attraction phase. They have enough bait, they have enough meat, they have enough whatever it is to draw a man unto them. And then where they may struggle is maybe maintaining that relationship. Now, we can't count her first marriage because that was her high school sweetheart. They were married for 11 years. And I think that also probably shaped her dating life thereafter. Not everyone finds their true love in high school. They don't. And for a while, it seems as if you had a niece who went from high school to being married and being a mother. And when she was married to him, he ended up dying. He had an accident on the job and he passed away. And very, very, very sad story. And during that time, Anise hadn't even gone to college or anything. But it was during that time after her husband passed, she realized that she was going to have to step up and do a lot more. And that meant that she was going to have to raise her children alone. I think she had 2 children. I don't think she had 3. Maybe it was 2. I can't remember. But in any case, here she is, a young woman, maybe 30. Now she's a widow at a very young age. She doesn't have, at this time, she hadn't even gone to college, developed her career or anything. Because I think she was planning on mostly being maybe a stay-at-home mom. Or I think she told us that the agreement with her husband was after the children turned a certain age, she was going to then join the workforce. This was the family plan. But because of the husband's untimely death, it really just threw a big old curveball in the plan. And so when he died, when he passed away, that is when she went to college. Not only did she go to college and put herself through college, she also had to work and she had to raise these kids. So when you talk about being disciplined, that's Anise. Now, that is what I see written all over Anise. I see discipline written all over her. I'm going to tell you right now, at 62 years old, to be in the type of shape that she's in, you got to be disciplined. For her to have gotten through what she got through at such a young age as a widow with 2 children, and at that time, not really having a viable career and making it, she was disciplined. She tells us that she went on to go to community college, then she went to undergrad, she went to Vanderbilt for grad school, and she eventually went on to get her doctorate, her PhD. This is what this woman did. She is disciplined, she is hardworking, and it shows up in a lot of areas of her life. Now you got to ask yourself, all that discipline, all that hard work, all that energy surrounding that, how does that appear in her dating world? How does that appear in her dating? Who does she show up as? And one of the things that she told the therapist was that she's been told in the past that she sabotages her relationships. She self-sabotages her relationships. Now, what I said was, I don't think Anise has ever had a problem attracting a man. I think there's good evidence that she can attract a man. Absolutely, she can, especially a man that's around her same age, or even older, because she comes off as a lot younger. So she probably even could attract men that are younger than her who wouldn't even know that she's 62 or whatever age she is. So, but what she said was, here we go. She said that the problem with the men that she has been dating and attracting has been that a lot of those men like to play in the candy store, which means what I gathered from that is a lot of the men that she's dated wound up being cheaters. They wound up being cheaters. So then you have to ask yourself, why has Anise attracted so many cheaters in her life, right? What is it about Anise that draws these men onto her? Well, the first thing I can say is because Anise, and everything is a double-edged sword, because Anise presents body, yaddy, yaddy, she probably does attract a lot of men who might be superficial, okay? Because one of the things that they're attracted to her the most is her body. And when she says this thing about, I want a man to see me, what she's saying is all they see is my body, and they actually don't see this PhD mind I got. Right? I'm a smart woman. I'm just not a body on the outside. I'm also very smart. But what happens is men go off physical attraction first. And when the men are drawn onto her, I'm sorry to tell you, Anise, a lot of what they're drawn to initially is your body, right? And then what you would have to do is you would have to take them from being sold on your body to all of a sudden making them sold on your mind too. That would have to be the change that man would have to go through. Oh, I love her body and I also love her mind. But unfortunately, some men who are very driven by body, outer looks, they're not interested in your mind. That's not why they're with you. They are with you for your body. So when you try to all of a sudden get them interested in your mind, it becomes a hard thing to do. And if they're filled with lust all the time, these men you're attracting, there's a good chance that it's hard for them to stay faithful to you because remember, they are really, really motivated by looks, which means they could look around all the time and find another beautiful woman, which means it's hard for them to get out of the candy store. You see what I'm saying? I always believed that the best way to date is to have a balance, to not always lead with your sexuality, sensuality, or whatever, but to also balance out your intellect and your outer beauty. Because if you don't learn to balance it out, what you tend to attract are men that are not balanced. You see, when you present too much body all the time, too much sexiness all the time, those are the men that approach you first, which means those are the men you have to choose from, right? And then the men who might be more interested in your mind, sometimes they are actually turned off by your presentation. So if you want to attract a man that also likes you for your intellect, you also have to do something. You have to be a different woman. You have to make sure that you don't overpresent yourself in one category at the expense of that man not seeing you in another. It's the same way if you were the opposite. If you're very intellectual and you're very deep, you also want to make sure that you present enough sexiness and enough allure so that you also are able to attract the man. A lot of women are very attractive in their minds and their intellect, but sometimes they do need to do a little bit more work on attracting a man physically. Balance is key. And I'm going to tell you right now that Anise, in her presentation, I believe she's out of balance. And I think what she wants is she wants a man that's more balanced. And if she wants more men to choose from, she would have to balance out her presentation so that she gets another group of men that are attracted to her. I think a lot of men who are really going to be stunned by her outside, her body, and then what that will do is it will limit the type of man she has to choose from. It's just my point of view. A lot of people may get upset with what I'm saying, but dating is a strategy. Dating is a strategy. And Anise said that she was in marketing. So it's interesting that she hasn't figured out her own marketing strategy of herself. And maybe that's her blind spot. Maybe that's the blind spot that she's talking about, that here she is able to sort of see others, but maybe her blind spot is that she's not seeing her own marketing strategy. She's a marketing executive, but she doesn't even see her own marketing strategy in herself. I think what she's thought of doing is let me just present the best possible package there is. and that will draw to me what I want. And I think that's not what she's been experiencing. Not at all. One of the things that she told the expert was that she often downplays herself. So this is what's interesting. She said that because she has a PhD, men are often intimidated by the PhD. And so what she says is when she dates, she downplays it because she doesn't want to sort of scare the men off. And so one of the exercises the therapist, not the therapist, the expert is going to give her is that, no, you shouldn't downplay your PhD because you would want to present that up front to make sure that that's not going to be an issue with the man, because then why would you want to be with a man in which you have to diminish yourself, which I believe is the truth. But the part that I'm going to look back on is I'm going to actually challenge her a bit more about the fact that a lot of men are intimidated by her PhD. What I believe is that when she presents in the world, she doesn't present, like I said, she presents more physically, right? She presents her physicality first, and that's going to attract a certain type of man. And then what happens is once she reveals to that man, hey, I'm more than a pretty body. I've also got a brain. You got to remember, you just attracted a man who's not even interested in your brain. So when you say all of a sudden you've got a PhD and you find that maybe he's turned off by it, or you find that he doesn't value it as much as you are, it's easy to come to the conclusion that, oh, he's intimidated by me. No, it's really what he's saying is, I don't care about it. I wasn't attracted to it. When I saw you and when I wanted you and I wanted to date you, I could care less that you had a PhD. I liked you because of your physicality. And now you want me to be interested in something else about you, and I'm not that interested. You see, that's why I say you've got to present with balance, because in a lot of ways, it's kind of like catfishing. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of like catfishing when you present really a whole lot one way, and then you end up being a completely different person. I think that's kind of catfishing. I think she's much more of a serious person than maybe people think, right? Maybe people think that she's all about working out and all about her outer beauty and she's superficial, and she's none of that. I think she's a much more balanced person in real life, but I think that's not what comes off in dating. So I would challenge her to say, hey, the men are intimidated by me. I don't think so. So in this exercise that the expert has given her, in a lot of ways, the expert is telling her to tell the man up front, because then she can figure out if the man is intimidated or not. I think it's actually another exercise. It's another exercise which makes Anise show up authentically in the relationship in the beginning. You see, because when she hides her PhD, when she hides her intellect, and all she's producing is her physicality, she's kind of catfishing the man, right? And what this doctor, this behavioral specialist is saying is, hey, when you catfish a person in the beginning, what happens is they're expecting a certain person. So then when you reveal this other person, you can get mad all you want, but they kind of feel catfished. So what the doctor is saying is, no, you not only have to present who you are in the beginning, not just because you want to see if this man is intimidated by you, because I want you to stop hiding who you really are, because you're hiding who you really are to get a man, but you can't stay that woman. You can't stay the woman you just pretended to be. So when we look at her 3 marriages, when we look at the fact that she had 2 marriages in between that, from when she became a widow, which means she probably was only married about 5 years. I'm going to tell you right now, 5 years is about the time when people stop trying to make things work, when they realize it's not going to work. You meet a person, you could be your representative. You can put on an act. You may not really get to know a person because a person can try to show you things about them for the first year, right? You get married. Then the real you comes out, or the real them comes out. By year 3, you're having a whole lot of problems. You hang in there a couple of extra years to see if you can make it. Then you get a divorce. You see, I think one of Anise's biggest problems in dating is that she showed up not authentically who she was, because she showed up trying to capture a man with her physicality, her looks, all that outer package. And then when she caught that man, she caught the wrong man, because that's not who she really is. And when she tried to be more of herself in the relationship, that man rejected that, right? And that man sure probably did cheat. He probably went out and wanted to authentically find that woman he thought that she was, that she's not. So being someone that you're not in the beginning of a relationship not only hurts, it hurts you in the long run, because once you finally show up who you are, you run the risk of your partner not liking you. That's not who I thought I married. That's not who I wanted to be with. If this is who you were going to be, you should have told me that from the very beginning, and we would have never got together. You see? So anyway, what ends up going on is that she says typically when she goes out on dates with men, she cuts them off real quick. After 1 or 2 dates, she don't like them, right? Like I said, I can see her getting asked out a lot. I can see her having a lot of dates. And along the way, she says, this is not the guy for me. I think she wants a good looking man. She wants him tall. She wants him in shape like her. So she basically wants the same thing she is. She wants a man that could be 60 or 62, but presents in the world as if he's 50. Well, get ready, because if you got a 62-year-old man that presents in the world like he's 50, then that man is going to have access to 45-year-old women. Listen, a 45-year-old woman will date that 60-year-old man, because what she'll say is, wow, I get the maturity of a 50 or 60-year-old man, but yet he's in shape and looks good and he's 50 years old. So that's a rough road, Anise. It's a really rough road. But anyway, they end up setting her up, y'all, on a blind date with this guy, George. Now, George is divorced 2 times too. He's been single for 7 years, and it didn't say how long he was married. So we're missing a little bit of information about him. But he has 1 kid. Remember, Anise has 3. And he is a retired nuclear security officer. When I saw nuclear security officer, y'all, I started thinking about, oh my goodness, a Tyler. Tyler from Love is Blind was a nuclear security officer, but he's retired. And so they set them up on a blind date. And when Anise came into the restaurant, she came into the restaurant with this short dress on. And here was the facial expression of George. When he first did this facial expression, y'all, I didn't know what it meant. I want to know what y'all think this facial expression is doing. What is it giving?
Perfect. Right this way.
Hi.
Hi. You're
Anise.
Nice to meet you, George.
George.
How
I'm
you
a husband,
doing?
okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Now, when I saw this facial expression, I thought it was given, oh no, here we go. At first, I thought it was a look of relief that I've got this great woman. I've got this great woman that I've been set up with. She's beautiful. But when I saw George's look, it looked like the look of exasperation. It looked like, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. And I think what he did was, in that first look, he judged Anise. And this is what I'm saying about Anise. I think she gets judged based on her physicality, but it's not really who she is on the inside. And I think when she walked through that door, what George said was, who is this young woman walking in here? And I don't want to deal with all this, even though she looks good. Even though she looks good. Because what proceeded to happen on this date with George and Anise was a hot mess. George was a whole hot mess. And I'm going to tell you right now, George was thrown off by the fact that Anise was older than him, because he said she looked younger, that how is she about dating a younger man or something. And when he found out that she's actually 2 years older than him, he was like, I guess black don't crack. because he was shot. He was shot. And so Anise, she lives in Atlanta. And Mr. George said he drove there from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I don't even know how close or how far it is. I don't even know my geography that well. But he said as bad as Atlanta traffic is, I guess he said it only took him the same amount of time to get to Atlanta than probably she did driving in Atlanta. But, you know, she gave him a compliment. She said that she liked his gray hair and his dark skin, that was good. And she let him know that, you know, she was into marketing. And then she did exactly what the professional told her, which was tell him right away that you have a PhD. And she right away started telling him that she went to community college, then she got her bachelor's degree, then she went to Vanderbilt, and then she got a PhD. And she said she just loves to learn. She loves to learn. She's a serious-minded woman who loves intellectual conversation. She loves deeper things to talk about. But yet she walked into the restaurant with a dress, a short mini dress. She looked good. She looked good. But I'm telling you right now, who she is on the outside and her outer package attract two different men. And I think what she did was, he said he loved looking at her, that she is his kind of eye candy. His kind of eye candy. And all of a sudden, George started asking some really, really crazy stories to Anise. Here he has a woman sitting in front of him who just told him, I went to community college, a bachelor's degree, a master's, and a doctorate. And when she tells him she's got 3 children, his question is, do you have 3 kids with the same daddy? Basically saying, do you have 3 baby daddies? So now we learn a little bit about George, because it's not that there's not anything wrong with wanting to know the birth stories, a family story of a woman. But the way that George started talking about it started telling me a little bit more about who he is and who he dates, right? Because what he automatically assumed was that here is this woman coming in, presenting herself hot, like a hot woman. He starts to conjure up, I believe, stereotypes of who Anise might be. And one of it is that she ran the streets, she's loose, she's this, she might have 3 baby daddies. And she didn't answer him, because I don't know how many daddies she has. I think for sure she had 2 with the first husband that she was married to for 11 years. But I know she had 3 children. So there's a good chance she had her 3rd child with one of her other husbands, because she was still young. There's a good chance she has 2 fathers. One is passed away and the other one, and nothing is wrong with it, because I don't think she ever answered him. She just was basically offended by the question, and most women would be. It's not a question that you should be asking in that manner and in that way. And then what he says is, oh, it's because I've dated women who've had 3 different baby daddies. That's why I'm asking you. And Anise accurately said, well, is that an excuse or is that your reason? Right? Is it an excuse or a reason? And I'm with Anise. It doesn't excuse it. I really don't care about what your history of dating is, George. But right now you're sitting with me and you need to have a little bit of a different attitude, a different way of approaching me. But here is the problem, Anise. Now, I know people should say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but when that's all people have to go off, that's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do. So that in itself, I believe, also opened up the door for George to come with this type of energy he's coming with. It was some bad energy. It was some foul energy, and I didn't like it. You know, he started saying, hey, he thought she was much younger. And that's when he found out that she was 62 years old. And I think he put a little bit more respect on it. But see, here you go again. He's already somewhat judged her. And now she's got to convince him that she's not that girl. And that's what I'm saying. She attracts some of the wrong type of men. And when they finally get to know who she is, maybe they don't even want that person. Because even George sat on here and said that he likes a little ghetto in a woman. He told Anise, all you need is a blonde wig. George is ghetto. George is ghetto. George is ghetto. This man sat there in front of her and said, "Have you had any work done?" What? He is a whole fool. A whole fool. He don't deserve to be on a date with Anise. He don't deserve to be on a date with anyone. He said he liked a little woman with a little ghetto in him. And so when they were talking about where they lived, that he lived in Chattanooga and she lives in Atlanta, she asked him, "Oh, do you come to Atlanta a lot?" This man at 60 years old says he lives in Chattanooga, but he F's around in Atlanta. What? What? What I got from what he's saying is, I live in Chattanooga because that's more where my piece is. But what I do is when I want to run the streets and I want to date fast women and ghetto women and all this other kind of stuff, what I do is I come up to Atlanta and do all my dirt. This is where I come up to and do all my dirt. So this your double life, your quiet life in Chattanooga, but then you come up to Atlanta to do your dirt. And now what you thinking is, this is the type of woman, Anise, where you come up to Atlanta and do all your dirt. He not respecting Anise. He not respecting her at all, because this conversation is disrespectful. It's very disrespectful. And the fact that he started disrespecting her so soon in the date tells me what his image was of her when she walked through the door. And I know people don't want to hear it, but in the way that Anise presented herself, she presented herself with all this physicality. And as a result, I believe he was comfortable going there sooner. Now, do I think this is George period? I do. I do think it's George period. But what I think about George is he felt comfortable going there real soon because he assumed he knew what Anise was all about, and he don't know nothing about her. Nothing about her. He is ghetto. He the type of old man living in Chattanooga that come up to Atlanta, spend money on young girls, and buy what he wants. I know who he is. I know he's out here buying it from women. That's what he's doing. He told her she had to get up and go to the restroom because, when she was tired of even being on this date with him. And all he could do was look at her booty when she was walking away. And he started talking about, "Oh, I love to see you walk away." Ugh. No wonder. See, this is the type of date that Anise goes on when she says after 1 or 2 dates she's done. 1 or 2 dates she's done. But I'm going to tell you, Anise, girl, half of this is your problem. Half of this is your problem. Half of this is the bait that you're using to catch men. And if you want to have a different type of man that in which you attract, you've got to use different bait. And the bait that you are using attracts the man like this. This is what it attracts. So if you want different outcomes, people got to do different things. Different things. So it ain't no way, I know it ain't no way that she is going to go out with George again. She like, check, please. Check. Bring the check for him to pay it because she out of here. She is out of here. So I think in the next episode, we're going to get to see her go out with another man. So it's going to be interesting to see how her dating life progresses. Really, really interesting. So the next bachelor we have on the show for the matchmaking is Nate. So Nate is 56. He has a daughter. He has 2 daughters, I think. He was married for 16 years. No, I think he has 1 daughter. But anyway, he has a daughter. He was married for 16 years. And what he says he wants in a woman is he wants a woman that's educated. He wants her curvy shaped. He likes hip and thighs. And he likes buttocks, right? And he says that a little bit of him is OCD. He likes things in order, no clutter. He really lives a peaceful life, and he wants a woman with a peaceful life. He doesn't want any discord. And he's been 5 years since, I know what he said. I'm looking at my notes. He was saying that when he got divorced, that he thought he would get remarried. So he was married for 16 years. And now it looks like he's been single for almost I don't know, 7 to 10 years. And what he said was when he got divorced after 16 years of marriage, he said that he thought he would be remarried in 5 years. Really interesting. So here's a man who came out of a divorce, already knew he wanted to get remarried. He thought he would get remarried within 5 years. It didn't happen. Then he said, okay, I'm going to get married in the next 5 years. And it didn't happen. So now I think right now he's been married. He's been either single for 7 to 10 years and he wants to get remarried. When I first saw Nate, I was like, oh, he seemed like he'd be a good fit for Anise. In fact, I thought they were going to hook these two up. But then I noticed about Nate that he had a bit of a limp, that he has a bit of a small disability with his leg. Come to find out that he was like a paratrooper in the Army and he injured himself in the Army. And so now he has like sort of like a disability, like he has back pain, he has leg pain. And I thought, oh, Anise wouldn't like him because remember, Anise is the person who wants someone who's fit and in good shape like her, who's 62 and in good shape. And Nate is even younger than her and he kind of has this disability. So I thought to myself, I said, oh no, she won't like him. So we quickly found out that they weren't going to pair him with her anyway. I think they even said, hey, this isn't a good fit. But instead, what they did was they sent him out on his own blind date with another woman. Now, remember this. When they're talking to Nate, all of a sudden they have this other woman appear on the show, sitting next to Nate, very close to him on the couch. And this ends up being a woman named Jacqueline. Now, Jacqueline we find out is the mother of Nate's daughter. So I'm thinking, okay, because they looking real cozy on the couch. They sit next to each other. They greeting. She comes over talking about, oh, I love your house. I've always loved your house. I always come over here and get decorating ideas. They're real chummy. We find out that Jacqueline is the mother of his daughter. And my first thing is like, well, why aren't y'all together? Because y'all over here looking like you two peas in a pod. Now, what I come to find out is here's this same old scenario where you see women, poor Jacqueline. You see women who have been friend zoned by a man and that woman hasn't fully moved on in her life. She's kind of on the straddle fence where she doesn't have a romantic relationship with the man, but that man is somewhat of a surrogate boyfriend to her because from what I can see, Jacqueline ain't married. Jacqueline ain't got no boyfriend, but yet she the best friend of this man she had a baby with. So I'm like, I need to know the circumstances around them having this baby. So we find out, he starts telling the story. Nate starts telling the story. Now, what I'm paying to is the language of Nate. Nate tells the story that they met when they were in college. They both went to an HBCU. I forget what HBCU they went to. And he's also part of a fraternity. He's part of Omega Psi Phi. And the way he describes he and Jacqueline's relationship back in college was that they had a series of sexual encounters. This is what he said. So this tells me that he and Jacqueline were never boyfriend and girlfriend. He never claimed Jacqueline. He basically said that he and Jacqueline were sleeping together, which means he never said we were college sweethearts, we were dating, none of that. He said that he and Jacqueline had a series of sexual encounters over a period of 3 weeks, and she got pregnant. They got pregnant together. This woman is over here eating out this man's plate. When he's sitting and telling the story, they're sitting there like a breakfast bar eating dinner, and she starts talking about, can I have some of your macaroni and cheese? And she's down, want to stick her fork in his plate. That's intimate. And she's trying to create intimacy. In fact, on this show, she's trying to show and prove to anyone who's watching that she has an intimacy with him. And it may not be because they are sexually sleeping with each other, but she has an intimate connection with him. Now, remember, he was married for 16 years. So this is what you got to know, that they had a child when they were in college. They slept together, sexual encounters. He never claimed her as her boyfriend and girlfriend. At this point in time, she doesn't seem like she's married. We don't hear about her boyfriend relationship status. She hasn't moved on. He then did also move on and get married. But what type of role was Jacqueline playing in when he was married to this woman in 16 years? Listen. This ain't right. This is not right. He said he's ready. He's ready to find a new woman that he can marry and settle down with. Interesting enough, he also chose as his celebrity crush Janet Jackson. So you got Anise, who chose Michael Jackson as her celebrity crush, and you got Nate over here, who chose the celebrity crush of Janet Jackson. Janet was the celebrity crush of a lot of men. Remember them posters Janet used to have with all, Janet. But he says he was in the military for 18 years. And so basically he's like a disabled veteran. And like I said, he said he was very, very organized. He joined a fraternity in college, Omega Psi Phi. And what we know about him is he's a very, very buttoned up person. Very buttoned up person. But what's so interesting about the further story with him and Jacqueline, that in a lot of ways, some people might say that Jacqueline tried to trap him in college. Some people might say that. And when I say some people might say it, even the therapist, the professional said it. Because the professional said to him, he told the professional, listen, they had a baby when they were in college. And what he tells the therapist, and I think Jacqueline even tells the story, that she had already said that when she was 22 years old, she wanted a baby by 24. So Jacqueline had already planned to be a mother at a younger versus an older age, right? And what she said was, she started telling this story about, she saw a shooting star, and a shooting star was going to represent that she could have a baby. And lo and behold, the next night that she slept with Nate is when she got pregnant. And in her eyes, it was all by a divine plan. So I believe that Jacqueline is secretly in love with Nate. That's what I believe. And Jacqueline, from the very beginning of their sexual encounter, believed that Nate is supposed to be the love of her life. And I think what Jacqueline looks like as, he has not chosen to be with me in that way, but eventually, if I hang around him long enough and he goes through other women, he will see that I'm really the woman that he needs to be with. Jacqueline has assigned some weird shooting star fate story to not only Nate being the father of her children, but Nate being the man that she should be with for the rest of her life. And you know, when the therapist or the behavioral scientist is listening to this story, and she's asking about, well, Nate, how is it that you were able to remain friends with a woman when the reality of it is that woman really sort of betrayed you? And when that therapist called it out loud, that listen, what Jacqueline did is really a form of betrayal, because what Jacqueline did was, Nate said, I thought you were on birth control, that you told me you were on birth control. And what she said was, I wasn't on birth control. I was on the rhythm method. So there's this story around that Jacqueline told Nate she was on birth control, but she really wasn't. She was on the rhythm method. And what she laughed and said afterwards was, yeah, I guess my rhythm was off. What, girl? So This sounds like a trap, Jacqueline. This sounds like you had this plan from the very beginning. So not only to me is Jacqueline really weird, she's also kind of like a liar, y'all. I got to tell you, because that is a level of betrayal. You basically try to trap him. And now, in a lot of ways, you're sitting here trying to pretend like you just want to be friends with Nate, but you're probably secretly in love with him. You still lying. You still lying to yourself. This man called her a series of sexual encounters. A series of sexual encounters. He never claimed her as his girlfriend, and she's still hanging around talking about shooting stars when she saw this man and had to be with this man. Girl, what type of woman would want to come into Nate's life with this woman hanging around this close? This close. We're not talking about her being around when the child was young and they had to raise the child. Remember, they had this child when they were in college, maybe 20 years old. Their daughter, I think the daughter was even on camera, got to be at least 35 years old. She looked like she a mother her own self, right? So at this point in time, I'm not quite getting this entire relationship. And it's okay if you guys want to be chummy bummy friends, but what Nate would have to know is a lot of women don't want to come into that. A lot of women don't want to have to crawl over another woman to get to you, What woman wants to come into your life and deal with all the stuff that's going to come from Jacqueline, who's over inserted her life, eating off your plate? What? What woman want to be with you, Nate, and you got Jacqueline eating off your plate? You got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. So what he said was Jacqueline is his best friend. And yeah, he's using her to be the woman that he can go and talk to and talk about things, have an emotional connection with a woman, but yet he's not physically attracted to her. Right? We see this, we're watching on Married at First Sight. We find EKG is not physically attracted to MM, but he's probably going to love having an intellectual conversation with her, right? We see it all the time. Nate tells us that he was engaged to another woman, but the fiance got pregnant by another man while they was engaged. What? This behavioral therapist, she owned it and said, so you've been betrayed by two women. This woman right here, Jacqueline, who you still have in your life, your relationship started from betrayal, right? Your relationship started from trickery, betrayal. Then you was the fiance with another woman, and while you was engaged to her, she cheated on you too. So what the behavioral really honed in is all this buttoned up behavior of yours because you are afraid to trust women. And I think he finally had to admit that the only woman he's ever trusted in his life was his grandmother. His grandmother. So what the behavioral specialist is going to say is, she's saying, okay, the exercise I want to give to you, Nate, is I'm going to need you to show some of your vulnerability early in the relationship because you don't show any vulnerability. And let me tell you, this vulnerability that Nate doesn't show, it started a long time ago. The fact that he's still running around calling Jacqueline a woman that I had a series of sexual encounters with over 3 weeks, and she's sitting over here giggling and kikiing over it. That's weird. Weird. So his assignment when he goes on this blind date is to show vulnerability early in the date, right? Say something that makes him vulnerable. And he says, okay. So he's a sharp dresser. He dresses really sharp. He's getting suited and booted. And he says he's really nervous, really nervous to go on this date. So what I want to talk about is what I talked about before. Who you present, but who are you really on the inside? You see, who are you really on the inside? And what I can say about Nate and Jacqueline is, for some reason, Nate isn't attracted to Jacqueline, right? They have all these things in common in terms of being besties, right? Which you think a relationship is also built around friendship. but yet Nate doesn't have the physical attraction to Jacqueline, right? Because if you have the friendship and you have the physical attraction, that becomes the, bada boom, bam, 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 right? But he seems to have the friendship with Jacqueline, but not the physical attraction. So now I'm wondering what does the outer package that Nate likes? What does that look like? Because it's obviously not Jacqueline. So they set him up on this date with this lady named Latricia. And come to find out that one of the things they have in common is they both served in the military. So Latricia is served in the military, never married, no kids, and she's an IT professional. Okay? So IT professional, right? No kids, never married. Now, does she first have the outer package that he likes? I think he does. When she came in, the first thing that Nate said was he liked her smile and he liked her long flowing hair. There you go. If you look at Jacqueline, she don't have no long flowing hair. She got a different look. She's more like natural, right? A natural look. So I think Nate likes a woman that's more makeup and hair and nails and heels. And when he saw Latricia, he goes, "Ooh, I love the heels that she's wearing," because he likes a woman that wears high heels. That's why Jacqueline was friend zoned back in college. Jacqueline was the home friends with benefits. That's really what Jackie was. If Jackie really understood what bucket she was put in, she really could have gone on to find her a man for herself, because I think she done wasted a lot of years over here thinking that Nate all of a sudden is going to find her sexually attractive because he's going to like her so much as a friend. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works. So initially, I'm thinking, okay, Nate likes Latricia. They find out that, they both in the military. Now, Latricia says she's from Kingston, Jamaica, and that, she was also a military brat, which means she was born into a military family, which means she moved around and lived different places. And same thing with Nate. So Nate not only went to the Army himself, he was also a military brat. So as they're talking about their military service and everything, Latricia says something interesting. She says, "Oh, well, when I was in the military, I was more into 92 Bravo," which I have no idea what that means. But Nate says that he was a captain in the military. And as a result of being a captain and officer, Latricia said, "Oh, we would have never been able to fraternize in the military because if you were one rank and I was another rank." And Nate says, "Oh, no, I could be an old dirty dog. Don't forget I'm an Omega Psi Phi member." He said, "No, I could have fraternized with you. I could have fraternized with you when I was in the military." And so now we're starting to get, like I talk about, the outer package versus the inner package. Nate's outer package is that he is buttoned up, that he is conservative. Like he said, he likes a peaceful life. But I think who Nate is on the inside, there's another part of Nate that's a little bit more wild. It's a little bit more wild. So on the outside, you see this buttoned up lace front military guy who's real neat, OCD, in order. But what I believe about Nate in the way that he chooses women or wants to be with women, I think Nate likes a little bit of a wild side. That's what I think. I think he wants a little bit of a wild woman. And Latricia showed up here almost a little bit too buttoned up. And the other reason why I know that Nate was presenting this sort of outer package was because one of the things that he said when they were about to have their food was, "Do you pray?" This is what he said. "Do you pray?" And what he meant was, do you pray over your food, because they want to give Thanksgiving for what they're about to eat. And boy, oh boy, Latrice lit up. She was like, "Oh my goodness. Absolutely, I pray." She started talking about her relationship with God, how she values her relationship with God. And she started to reveal a little bit more of her spirituality and her religion and things like that. And she was so happy that he asked for her hand and they prayed. Now, what Latricia is thinking is that, oh, he's a really religious man because he said, do you pray? Girl, he just asked you, do you want to pray over this food? He didn't say he pray every day or go to church. He didn't say nothing about that. He just said, do you want to give thanks over this food? And to be honest with you, I don't know if he does it all the time or if he just wanted to ask the question to see what Latricia was going to say. So now Latricia's all happy, y'all. She over here, check. He's checking off all the boxes. Then they get to the part about, she says, oh, I noticed that you're not drinking any alcohol. Do you drink? He says, oh, no, I don't drink, nor do I smoke. Latricia's like, ooh, a man of God. You don't drink, you don't smoke. She's like, this is fantastic. She's like, he is checking off all the boxes. You pray, you're religious, you don't drink, you don't smoke. This is what Latricia wants. She wants a straight-laced guy like him, buttoned up with a suit and a tie. You know? So when they're talking about things that they like to do, then she says, oh, do you like to go to lounges and hang out in clubs? Latricia definitely don't want no man in the streets. She's like, I want a man of God. I want a man who doesn't smoke, who doesn't drink, who doesn't go out to clubs, who doesn't do any of these things. And then what Nate is saying is, nope, I don't do any of those things either. Latricia is in la land, right? And at this moment, I'm thinking, oh, this is a good match. I'm even thinking at this moment, it's a good match. So they start talking about like, what do they like to do for fun? And Latricia says she stays in shape. She likes to jog and she likes to do a lot of outdoorsy stuff. And it was in that moment that Nate decided to share this vulnerability part of him that the therapist or the behavioral scientist said share. And what he said was, I can't really do those things because I have a lot of ailments. Basically meant from his injury from being a paratrooper. And so Latricia, at this point, she sold on him anyway. She ain't gonna care about that. So she says, oh no, I understand. And it looks like you keep yourself in good shape. You work out. So there's lots of different ways to work out and stay in shape. And it looks like you do that. So what Latricia did was she blew right past that, because what she's focused on is the fact that, hey, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't like to go to clubs, you buttoned up, you like to pray. There's so many things I like about you that I could care less that you walking over here with this limp and you can't run outside. Latricia is saying she is winning. She's winning. Then all of a sudden, the date starts coming to an end. And one of the things that Nate said is, can I take a selfie with you? And I think that was the first time that Latricia got a little thrown off. She got a little thrown off because she was like, a selfie? I've never had a man ask me to take a selfie with him, because I think what Latricia garnered from that was that, is this a little bit too superficial for me? Why do you want to take a picture of me or a picture of me so soon? And what he said was, I want to commemorate our first date. So he kind of cleaned it up. But when he first asked for the selfie, I think Latricia thought it was superficial, and I don't think she wanted to do it. But when he told her the reason why is because I want to commemorate this as our first date, almost as if this is going to be a keepsake, almost as if this is the beginning of something new for us, and I want to relish it and cherish it, I think it turned it around in her head, and she was all about it, and she took a picture with him. But here is something interesting. She walked away and she said, he's almost like a dinosaur, almost like a unicorn, that the conversation flowed so very well, that she was checking off all these boxes. And the thing that we know about unicorns is they don't exist. And the thing that we know about dinosaurs is that they died a long time ago. So if you're ever sitting with a person and you think that they're a dinosaur or a unicorn, that means you got some blinders on. You're not seeing everything. And that's good to live in that little euphoria state for a while. But what you got to do is you got to make sure you don't live there too long. And lo and behold, once they left the date, one of the first things Nate said to the producers or whoever the show was that he liked Latricia, but he's not religious, he's spiritual. Boom. There it is right there. You see, Because what vibes he was getting from Latricia is that Latricia was looking for a man that was so into God and dedicated to God that he's not going to want to sin, that he don't drink, he don't smoke, he's buttoned up, he's square. And what Nate was saying was, I know I present on this outside as this buttoned up, laced up guy, very well polished, but on the inside, I got a little bit of bad boy in me. A little bit of bad boy in me. And I'm going to tell you right now, I might have misled you. I don't want you to think that I'm real religious. I'm spiritual. And he don't want to be with no woman who's religious. So when Latricia was going on and on about her relationship with God, I think it was at that moment when Nate decided, I don't really want to be with a woman who's this religious, because I want a little bit of danger. He wants a little bit of sin in his life. He don't want a woman who's really trying to get rid of sin. He wants a woman that's comfortable with some sin in her life. And Latricia looked like a woman that was trying to live without no sin. And what he didn't want is he didn't want to get with no woman that was then going to say, I don't want to have sex before marriage. So what he told the producers was that, you know what, she checks some boxes, but he wants to go out with more people for someone who checks all his boxes. That's what he said. So once again, when I talk about first impressions versus getting to know a person, I think what Nate presents initially is this button-up guy, but really he got a little bad boy in him, and he wants a woman who's going to match that energy. That's what he wants. But it was an interesting date. It was really interesting date. So I guess we're going to end up seeing who they pair him with on the next date. We'll have to see if they give him a woman that's got a little bit more fiery spirit in her, some of that spirit that I think that Nate wants. You see, I think Nate, just like this Jacqueline's hanging around, he likes this soft landing spot over here, but over here, he likes a sense of danger, which is why he was a paratrooper. Nate likes a sense of danger, but he wants peace with where his woman is, but he also wants a woman that has a little bit of spark, because I think a woman that doesn't have that, he's going to get bored with her. His presentation is one thing, but who he is on the inside, I think he desires some risk taking. And Latricia was just a little bit too safe for him, just a little bit too safe. So the last lady that we end up meeting Suzanne. Suzanne, who is 63 years old. She's a very optimistic person, very bubbly, very outgoing. And she says she want to find love again. She want a man that's going to be kind, knows how to have a good time. She don't want no man who's got no pot belly. Suzanne also is a woman who's in very good shape. Now I'm telling you, all of these people who are dating, they all are in good shape. You got Anise, who's in good shape. You had Nate, who was in good shape. You have Susan, who's 63. She's also in good shape. And she got a long list of things she don't want. He got to have good teeth. Well, girl, he going to have to go buy his teeth at 63. She wanted to have big lips, big arms. Girl, folks is losing muscle mass at 63. He got to have nice feet. You know how tall people's feet be by the time they get 63 years old after wearing certain types of shoes for so long. She want him physically fit. He got to have good hygiene. She want silver hair, charismatic. She want him to be a jokester and somebody that loves wine. This woman. So her whole love story is that she was married for 27 years, and she's now a widow. And the dating coach name is Logan. I forgot. And the dating coach says, she just really wants to be a cheerleader for the ladies, but she's also a behavioral scientist. So she also has written a book called How to Not Die Alone. I've never seen the book or heard of the book, but it must be a book about how to not die alone, which means, I guess, how to find a partner in life so that you can have a partner to go through life with. But in the case of Suzanne, it's how do you find another partner after your partner has passed away, right? So she was married 27 years. Now she's back on the dating scene. And she says after she was married and her husband passed away, she basically just buried herself in her work, her projects, and her practice. Suzanne is a lot of energy, but she says now she wants to find, a new love. And one of the things that the behavioral scientist pointed out, which I thought was a good point, is that maybe what Suzanne needs to look for is not necessarily this love that's going to be the love of her life after she's already had that with her first husband. But maybe at this point in time in her life, maybe she looks for something more of a companion or a travel partner. Because I think the lady was pointing out that when you've been married to someone for 27 years and he was the love of your life, is it necessary to put so much pressure on yourself to recreate that love with another person? Or at this time of your life, is it better for you just to say, you know what? I really want a companion. I want company. I want someone to travel with. And you concentrate on those things. So instead of trying to have that man have everything you want, good teeth, good feet, physically fit, big arms, like, come on now, Suzanne, this is a little bit too much. This is a little bit too much. And I think what the behavioral scientist is trying to tell her is, girl, you need to focus. You need to focus on a couple of the most important things and forget about all that other kind of stuff. Then Suzanne starts talking about, oh yeah, he must love dogs and he's got to love the Georgia Bulldogs, the football team. What, Suzanne? You are looking for a man, let me get this right, that has beautiful teeth, big lips, big arms, nice feet, physically fit, great hygiene, a silver fox, charismatic, a jokester, loves wine, loves dogs, and he's got to be a Georgia Bulldog fan. Well, why don't you just go to an alumni party? That's pretty much it, Suzanne. You basically just need to go to an alumni event up there and find you a big wealthy donor, booster or whatever, and get with him. Because girl, your list is way too particular. Way too particular. She's an optometrist, and they end up sending her on a date with this guy who's going to be an attorney. And so, just like the behavioral scientist did with the other couple, the other lady, Nate and Anise, she asked who was their celebrity crush, and Suzanne chose Patrick Swayze as her celebrity crush. And that's, I guess that, or Matthew McConaughey. One of the two, Patrick Swayze or Matthew McConaughey. And what the advice that the dating specialist is going to give her is that when you get ready to go on this date, if the conversation starts to be too much about boring topics, she wants Suzanne to tell an interesting story. Maybe tell a story about a podcast you listen to and what was interesting about the podcast. I guess maybe Suzanne feels as if she doesn't have enough fun on her dates and the older men are too serious or they're too boring and she's full of life and she wants to have a more interesting conversation. So the therapist says, okay, you're the one that's going to have to take the lead on the interesting conversation if it starts going into a direction you don't want to go in. So anyway, so she ends up going on this blind date with this man named Frank. Frank is 63 years old. He's divorced for 8 years. He's been single. He got 2 kids, and he's also an attorney. And so when he shows up and she shows up, she's showing her little sexiness. She got her cleavage showing. She got a slit on her dress, but her dress is sort of free flowing. It's long. It's not tight. She didn't go all the way like Anise. Like Anise had sort of like cleavage kind of showing. She had a short mini dress on. She was showing everything, arms, cleavage, and legs. Sometimes when you're trying to be sexy, you got to pick one or the two. You either can show cleavage, but less leg, or I guess as Suzanne did, she showed cleavage and a small little slit. So you can be sexy, but you ain't got to put everything out there at one time. So I think Suzanne was trying to sort of strike a balance between the two. And when Frank saw her, he really liked her. He liked what she looked like. He bought her some flowers. And Suzanne's first comment about him was he a little bit too short for her. Because he is shorter than her, slightly. He probably told the producers that he was one height, but shoot, we be shrinking when we get older. And he probably done lost about 2 inches on his height. So she had on heels. She likes to wear heels, so she was taller than him. But probably if she didn't have on heels, they'd be the same height. But she did think he was handsome at least. So the first thing that he started asking her was where she lived. And immediately she didn't want to talk about that. Now, first of all, her house is fabulous. When they were going through her house looked like straight out of like Architectural Digest. She lives on a lake somewhere. Her house was beautiful. It's gorgeous on the inside and the outside. And what she didn't want to do was start to have that type of conversation. So the minute he asked her, where do you live? She went straight to the advice of what the person told her to do. And that was, hey, I just listened to an interesting podcast about Matthew McConaughey. Or no, it wasn't even about Matthew McConaughey. It was some weird kind of podcast about decision making. And it was so out of place. It was so weird. So it was like she took the advice of the behavioral scientist, but she stuck it in a real weird place, and the conversation wasn't flowing. Even Frank was like, what kind of detour was that? She should have at least answered the man's question and maybe led the conversation a different way. But I just thought it was really weird. And in fact, once the conversation came to get back on to sort of the small talk, which is the first part of getting to know each other, I think it actually started to flow more because she was able to tell her story that she lost her husband and how, it was really tough losing him. And that he also told the story that he's now been divorced for 8.5 years. And he also said that a lot of people don't like him. I was like, what? A lot of people don't like you. And I guess they're chalking it up to the fact that he is an attorney. But I don't know. When someone tells me a lot of people don't like them, I'm filing that away because I'm like, what? Even just because you're an attorney, I understand that you might need to be tough in the courtroom or tough as an attorney. But that doesn't mean that people don't like you. But he admitted that a lot of men or people don't like him. I thought that was a little bit odd. But he says he likes to play golf. And he also said he likes to gamble. So Frank got a little wild side to him, a little bit of a wild side. And when they're talking, he started to get a little weird, y'all. He was getting up, he was fidgeting. And what he was saying was he doesn't like to sit still for too long. He's a little bit antsy. And so now the picture of Frank is starting to come around, right? He likes to gamble. He likes to golf. A lot of people don't like him. He's antsy. He can't sit still for long. Frank be out here doing too much. That's what I'm going to say. Frank likes to be out here doing too much. But they having a good time because remember, Suzanne loves to talk. She got a little bit of vibrancy to her, and the two of them are vibing a lot. A lot. I mean, they start talking about what they, when their birthdays are. He said he was born, I think, in April or something. She was born on St. Patty's Day. They having a good time. She started talking about how she's now sort of retired, semi-retired. So she just works part-time as an optometrist. He started talking about how he going to get some type of some type of surgery where you get your eyelids lifted. I mean, these two are talking about everything. The conversation is flowing. There's no dead time. I mean, it's interesting. They're laughing with each other. He's flirting with her. She's like telling him, slow your roll, slow your roll. I mean, it's really, really good, interesting. He finds her classy, sexy, and pretty. And the only place where it starts to go bad a little bit is when Frank tells her that he has 2 children and he has 2 sons, one 19 and 16 years old. And she's like, what? She don't want to deal with no man who's raising children. So remember, the first strike was the fact that he was a little shorter than her. The second strike is that he's got young kids. I was even surprised his kids were this young, considering that he's 63 years old. So basically, he had children late in life. What was that mean? So if his oldest son is 19 and he is 63, let me see, his oldest son is 19, he's 63. So he basically had his oldest son when he was 44 years old. 44, 45 years old, somewhere around there. And then he had his second child 3 years later, so he was 48. So it's a good chance that he might have been married to a younger woman, and they had 2 children together. She might have been a little younger. And I could see that because I think Frank has a lot of energy. So I could see him wanting to be with a woman that has a lot of energy. And maybe back then he liked younger women. But one of the things about dating younger women when you're older as a man, then what happens is when you come back in the dating world like he is at 63 years old, and now you got a 16-year-old still at home, still going to college, still in the house, older women like Suzanne have raised their children and they not trying to go back and date no man with no children. That's one of the problems because women have had their children younger. They had their children in their 20s and their 30s, or even early 40s. So by the time they get to 63, their kids is grown and they really not trying to raise no other children. So I already know that has been a problem for Frank in dating because there are a lot of older women who don't want to date no man with older children. They really don't. But one thing he says is he likes Suzanne. She hot. He want another date with her. He definitely wants another date with Suzanne. But I think that Suzanne didn't even give him her number. He was talking about, I was trying to get her number, but then her daughter showed up and picked her up. And he says, I was going to write my number down on a piece of napkin. Boy, don't nobody write no numbers down on a piece of napkin no more. This is some later daters. But when Suzanne walked out of there, even though she liked Frank, even though she had a good time, even though the chemistry and the energy was really well, she said three things she didn't like. Let me say three things. One is she didn't like that he was short. She didn't like that he had 2 children that he was still raising. And she said she wanted to date a man that is a Georgia Bulldog fan. Ugh. Suzanne, girl, go on up there to the university and find you a professor or someone in the booster club with the Alumni Association, because this is ridiculous. So I don't see Suzanne going out with, I don't see her going out with Frank again. I think she had a good time, but I think she's serious about this Georgia Bulldog stuff. And I think she's serious about not wanting to date a man with children. So we're going to get to see who she dates again on the next episode. So anyway, come back, y'all, for the next episode. If you haven't watched episode 1, please go ahead and watch it so you can watch it with me, because I really want to know what y'all think down in the comments. And that's it for now, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.